I booked my flight tickets through Checkline, and I need to get my flight status. Imagine I'm in line at the airport with my bag in one hand and my phone in the other.
Hello and welcome to Checkline. What flight do you need to check on?
I need to check my flight status from SFO to LAX.
What airline are you flying on?
United.
I'll check flights on United Airlines departing San Francisco Airport and arriving at LAX. Flight UA 1069 is scheduled to arrive at 9:52.
Great, thanks. Now imagine I'm sitting in the airport lounge with my laptop open. I'll ask the same question. And on the web, I get more information in a visual format. We create conversations like this one in flows. Let's take a look at the flow editor so you can start learning the building blocks of flow development. I'll log into Cognigy and create a new agent by clicking Create Agent here. I'll name my agent Aviation and click Create to create the agent. Now I see the agent dashboard that is basically empty at this point. To create a flow, go to the left bar and under Build, choose Flows. Next, click New Flow and name it Main. Here's a shortcut. Once you've been working on your flow, you'll find it listed on the agent dashboard under Recently Changed. This takes you directly to your flow, open to the flowchart view. You can see the flow starts off empty with a start node at the top and an end node at the bottom. When a conversation starts, the input arrives at the start node and progresses through a set of logical decision points before a response is sent back to the user. Cognigy has a powerful, AI-driven natural language understanding engine that can understand what a user is trying to accomplish and learn over time. But for now, we're focusing on implementing a set of business rules as they're applied in conversation. I'll add a node to the chart by clicking the plus sign, and I'll create my first node, a Say node. A Say node outputs something to the user. I'll click on the Say node and Cognigy presents the Edit Node panel. I just want to output something simple, so I'll enter Hello World in the text field, and I'll click Save Node. To test out my flow, I can open the interaction panel by clicking the bubble icon in the top right corner. There's a lot to say about the interaction panel, and we'll cover it later in greater detail. But for now, you can just open it and say hi, and it says Hello World. In the flowchart, you can see a green line that highlights the path that Cognigy took to determine how to respond. Now I'll add another Say node beneath the first one. I'll make this one say, Good to meet you. If I test it out in my interaction panel now, it will execute the Say nodes one at a time. What if I want to say, Good to meet you first? I can click and drag the bottom Say node into the plus sign above the top Say node. Note that when I start to drag, the plus signs turn into circles. Drag your mouse pointer into the circle and release. You can test the bot now and it will say Good to meet you before it says Hello World. As your flowchart gets bigger, you'll need to navigate around the screen, and Cognigy makes it easy to find your way around. You can click and drag to move the flowchart, or you can just scroll up and down or left and right using your trackpad. You can zoom in and out using pinch and zoom. Or you can just use the zoom controls at the bottom of the screen to zoom in, out, and to recenter. You can also copy and paste nodes by using right-click, control-click, or command-click. I can copy a node and then paste on one of the plus signs. and I can delete it as well. We looked at how to output a simple message, but what if we want to create some variation? I'll type in a few options like welcome world and greetings world. Now when I interact with the bot, I'll get a random response from one of the three I've entered. The purpose of this feature is just to introduce some natural variability in your user interaction so that it feels a little bit less robotic. Here's a trick. To re-enter an input into the interaction panel, just click on the bubble and send the message. Now I'll enable linear. Instead of randomly choosing an answer, Cognigy will go through the list from top to bottom and then stick with the bottom output. If I enable loop, Cognigy will go from the top of the list to the bottom and then back to the top again. As you saw in the airline demo, Cognigy can output more than just text. In the web chat example, we output visual elements like quick replies and images. Let's learn how to do these, and we'll start with a quick reply. A quick reply appears as a button in the web chat with some text on it. Users can click the button to send a message to the bot instead of typing. Imagine you are just using your phone to interact with a chatbot. Sometimes clicking a button with your finger is faster than typing a response. I'll open my Say node and change the output type drop-down from text to text with quick replies. And I see a text field as before, but I also see an Add Quick Reply button. In the text field, I'll type, "How can I help you today?" And I'll give the user some options. I'll click Add Quick Reply twice because I want to create two options. If I click on Empty Quick Reply, I see a set of fields that Cognigy needs to render the quick reply. The two required options are button title and postback value. Let's start with those. The button title will be Check Flight Status, and the postback value can be the same. For my second button, I'll enter New Reservation in both the button title and postback value fields. I'll save, and then we can test it out. If I click Check Flight Status, it shows an input with the same value. Clicking the quick reply is the same thing as if the user typed in the text themselves. Sometimes you might want the button to have a short name, but the input to be longer. Let's see how that works with Check Flight Status. I'll edit my node and change the postback value to I need to check on the status of my flight. Save that and let's test again. Now when I click Check Flight Status, the postback value appears. There are different reasons why you might want to do this. For example, to illustrate for the user the actual input from clicking the button, or to provide a sentence that will trigger a specific intent. But what if this interaction were happening by phone? You might want the buttons to appear in a web chat, but different messages should be spoken on the phone. There are two ways to address this. First, I can add fallback text. If I'm interacting with Cognigy on a channel that doesn't support text and quick replies, Cognigy can output the fallback text. Let's try that. I can help you check your flight status or book a new reservation. Now in the interaction panel, you'll see an orange bubble that shows the fallback text. This won't appear if the user is interacting in the Cognigy web chat, but it will be used if interacting on any channel that doesn't support quick replies, like SMS or voice. I'll make a call to show you how it sounds on voice.
I can help you check your flight status or book a new reservation.
Another way I can deal with this is through channel-specific output. If I open the Say node, I can click the plus next to Channels and select Voice Gateway, for example. For the text, I can add, "Thanks for calling. I can help you check your flight status or book a new reservation." Now, if the call is coming in by phone, Cognigy will output this message. If it's coming in through our web chat or Facebook Messenger, it will use the quick replies. And for any other channel that doesn't support quick replies, it will use the fallback text. You'll see these different channel outputs in the interaction panel: the main output, the fallback output, and the voice gateway output. Let's look at another output option, a gallery. Galleries include one or more images with optional titles and buttons beneath them. When I choose Gallery as my output type, I get an Add Card button. I'll click it, and I get a template I need to fill out. I'll have my title say "Welcome to Aviation Airlines," and my subtitle will say "The world's highest flying airline." Where it says Add Image, I'll paste a URL. Now if I save, I see this nice image with the title and subtitle. You might wonder, how can I upload my own image? Cognigy doesn't replace your content management or digital asset management system as a repository for digital assets like images, videos, PDFs, etc. Instead, you can add a link to a file from your website and it'll be rendered in the web chat. Now I'll choose a different image. First, I'll show you in a web browser. And now I'll show you in the interaction panel. You can see that the web chat crops the bottom part of the image, so all we see is the tail of the plane. Why is that? The image in the web chat needs to match the aspect ratio of the web chat bubble. Otherwise, your browser will center the image rather than focusing on what's important to you. If I crop the image a bit, or ask my graphic designer to do that for me, I can have the image exactly how I want it, with the nose of the plane at the bottom of the picture and the reflection of the skyline in the water. The dimensions I use for this image are 909 by 476. You can try anything with the 1.91 to 1 aspect ratio and see how it looks. Now we can do more than just have an image. We can add buttons by clicking the Add Button button. It will add an empty button, and I'll click on it to make it do something. I'll make the button say Terms and Conditions, and for the postback value, I can choose Send Postback, and it'll work like a quick reply. But I can also choose Open a URL and add a link. Let's try that. Now when I test it out, my card has a nice button underneath it. When I click on it, my browser opens a new tab with the URL I specified in my button. I can keep adding buttons, or I can add a new card. To do that, I'll expand the Edit Node panel so that it takes up most of the screen. I'll click Add Card to add a new card, and I'll populate it with some values. Now I have two cards. Let's see how it looks. I see the first card to the left and I get a teaser of the second card. If I click to the left, I see the second card. If I viewed the web chat on my phone, I could just swipe left and right to see these different options. Now let's take a quick look at text with buttons. These work just like the buttons in the gallery, but they have a text header instead of an image. Let's take a look in the interaction panel. I can also add a video. Let's see what that looks like. I get a nice preview in the editor, and when I run it in the interaction panel, you'll see basic controls for the video. This works great when the video is small like this one. I just add a link to the file on my server. But what if you want to add something longer that's best served from a streaming service like Vimeo or YouTube? To do this, I'll go to YouTube and copy the embed code. Just find your favorite Cognigy video and choose Share and Embed. I'll now copy that into my Say node using a regular text output type. Note that I'm changing the width and height parameters so that it fits nicely into my chat bubble. When I preview it in the interaction panel, I just see the embed code itself. Cognigy does this intentionally to prevent any unwanted code from executing within the Cognigy user interface. But when you view the chat in a web browser or on your phone, the video renders as expected. How do you preview your chatbot in the Cognigy web chat? You do this by creating an endpoint. I'll talk much more about endpoints in another video, but for now just go to Deploy Endpoints in the left bar. Click New Endpoint and call it Web. For the flow, choose the flow we've been working on, and for the endpoint type, make sure Web Chat is selected. Now save and click Open Web Chat. If you say hi, you'll see your YouTube video. We've talked about writing content in Say nodes, but what if you want to output something dynamic? We'll cover this topic in depth in later videos, but for now I'll introduce the topic of tokens. I'll go back to my Say node, and in my text field I'll click on the AI icon. You'll see a long list of tokens that will output dynamic content. In later videos, we'll talk about how to create your own tokens. I want the user to be able to input a monetary value, and I'll confirm it for them. In my text field, I'll say, I'll show you flights under $, and then I'll choose the first currency slot token. To test, I'll say, show me flights to Las Vegas under $200. The token is replaced by the match from the user's input. There's a lot more you can do with tokens, and you can test them out to see the different values that are available. The last feature of Say nodes I want to cover is adding links and styles to your outputs using HTML. Why would you need to do this? Well, we saw one example of embedding HTML earlier when we added a YouTube video. You may also want to do things like adding hyperlinks to your text. Even though you can do this in buttons, sometimes it makes more sense for users to present traditional links like you would see on a website. The easiest way to get your desired HTML is to use a hyperlink generator. There are many of these available if you search on the web, but I'll use this one. I'll enter the URL I want to link to, like our terms and conditions. I'll enter the target. This is important because you often want to open the link in a new tab rather than the current one. I'll select blank. For the text, I'll enter terms and conditions. Now I just need to copy my code by clicking the copy button. Back in Cognigy, I'll update my Say node. When I interact with my chatbot, I see the HTML markup in the interaction panel, but I see the full link in the web chat. Sometimes the colors of the web chat widget are a little too close to the colors on your website. This can make things like links blend in too much with the bubble color to be easily visible. To address this, you can add a style attribute. You might want to check with your website team to determine the right style to apply. For me, I'll just make my link green so it stands out. To do that, I'll just add style equals color, yellow to my HTML tag. Be sure you add it before the closing greater than sign. I'll save and preview again. Now it stands out against the background. There is a tremendous amount of customization you can do to the look and feel of the web chat. But this is just a quick workaround if your links are blending into the background and you don't know much about styling web pages. In our last topic for this video, I want to go over some general features that apply to all nodes, including Say nodes. If I look at my flow currently, I have a Say node and I see a small preview of what it says. But someone else looking at this flow may not understand what the node does without opening up and looking at it. Cognigy lets you add comments and labels to nodes to make their purpose clearer. I'll open my Say node and look at the styling section. I have options for a label and a comment. Right now, the label says Say, indicating that it's a Say node. But I want to make it clear that this is a welcome message, so I'll put welcome message in the label field and a more detailed comment in the comment field. When I click Save, I see the node is now called welcome message, and it has a little icon indicating that a comment is attached. When I click on the icon, I can view and edit the comment. Believe it or not, there's even more to say about Say nodes, but for now you have all you need to get started. We'll cover more topics related to Say nodes in our Flow Developer series.